Getting hyped for another show, and it's about to go off. Just getting things set up. That looks like we're ready to go. Do I talk about Zelda today? I don't know. I complain about Zelda, or am I setting up for Friday? We shall see. Alright. I think we'll dive into things here. Past 3. Let's do it. Sound okay?
Yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Alright. Good afternoon and welcome to the Enemy Stream. My name is Andrew Benison and we're going to be covering all the latest in gaming news and happenings and everything at the enemy team headquarters today. It is Wednesday. Can't believe it's Wednesday already. Crazy, week's absolutely flying by, and we do have actually quite a packed show. Monday was a little light on news, and again we're sort of dealing with the overall just constant fallout of Zelda. But as people play the game and say it's great, or like me, say it's kind of mid, not so good, people are starting to move on. The floodgates are opening on other things happening, and there's plenty going on right now. So we just found out that Sega is slaughtering, absolutely executing, like in World War II, a trench execution of Relic software, Relic games. It's not good, we shouldn't laugh, but it's sort of, it was expected. We've covered on the show numerous times the Company of Heroes 3 debacle, that awful launch. And there was, I believe we predicted that we'd be looking at layoffs soon, and here it is. They're laying off 100 employees, so we'll be talking about that. It's not a huge surprise, but there are obviously ramifications to it, and it's sort of lessons to be learned once again about what happens when you get acquired and get turned into a production line just churning shit out. Alongside that, on the other end of the spectrum, we have a new super studio setup, TTK Games, Time to Kill Games, made up of Battlefield developers, and already I'm feeling a little bit sus because they're like, hey, you know, we're here to make incredible games and be true to the spirit of amazing products, and you know, the usual stuff. We'll take a look at it, but also they have significant funding. There's only 8 of them right now, but they're saying, hey, we're gonna hire 50, 100 people, and don't worry, we're fully funded. I go, hey, well, you know, a lot of these fully funded super teams as of late don't end up producing the best of products. It's you got to wonder who's behind the scenes actually pulling the strings. But they give us guarantees that, you know, we're maintaining creative freedom. So okay, well, we'll see about that. But we'll talk a little bit about TTK. Take a look at their website. In other news, PSVR2 is apparently great. Apparently PSVR2 is selling like hotcakes. It's doing double the numbers people thought. So I guess all my naysaying was completely pointless. It was useless. Ignore me from now on. Apparently, PlayStation VR 2 is going amazing. Again, I would challenge that notion, but it is positive to see that it's doing better than expected. I still believe it needs to be doing a hell of a lot better than where it is. Everybody talks about this as, hey, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's going to take time for VR to propagate out into the masses. And it's like, okay, you know, PSVR 2 doesn't exist in a bubble. It exists as part of a timeline now of 10 years of us having VR in the games industry, in the kind of gaming zeitgeist. So I would say actually it's still not good enough, despite it being better than the projected or suspected numbers. It still needs to be doing better, but we'll talk about that. And again, it's positive stuff. And then we'll round off with some predictions on the PlayStation Showcase, which is happening tonight at 9 p.m. BST, our time, UK time. So we'll probably be covering that live. We'll be doing a live stream later tonight if all the pieces fall into place. We'll see. We should be doing that, but we're going to do some predictions on that ahead of time. And again, I think it's very important that PlayStation delivers like really positive forwards momentum on the PlayStation VR2. I think it's too early for things like PlayStation 5 Pro announcements, but hopefully we see some stuff on the VR front. And I'm no doubt we'll be seeing more of these live services that we've been talking a lot about over the past few weeks from all of their super studios. We'll be seeing more of that. So it's going to be interesting seeing which direction it goes. And I think this is important because it's one of the first big events of the not E3 era. I think this basically kicks it off. I mean, we're at one week to go until June, and early June into mid-June is when we have most of the other events. So this is Sony coming out the gate, and it's going to be very important in terms of the future of VR and just the future of like console gaming, of which, you know, we at Enemy Team believe is not looking very positive at the moment. The trajectory is towards live services and pay money every day for substandard products and etc. But we'll see. We're gonna remain positive. We're gonna remain glass half full, white-pilled. Hopefully gaming's not dead just yet. So before we jump into it, just to remind you that the Enemy stream is live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. BST, 10 a.m. EST. God damn, I got it the wrong way around. So we're live every week, and you can catch episodes of the Enemy stream on our YouTube channel, where we also throw up clips, and we're starting to produce more content on our games development front, so you can see shorts and videos of everything that we're working on, from Gun Day to Project Horde and everything in between. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, like, follow. Just add us to your bookmark. You don't even have to like and follow. Just add us to your bookmarks and check up on our channel 10 times a day to make sure that we're putting content out there and to keep a track of things. Whatever you want to do. Hey, so long as you're watching our content, we're fine with it. Doesn't matter how you end up with us, just make sure you end up with us. So, let's jump into things. Let's take a look at our first news story, which is Company of Heroes studio Relic Entertainment lays off over 100 employees. Damn. 121 employees were let go as a part of a restructuring aimed at focusing on Relic's core franchises, which is a bit odd because Company of Heroes 3 is one of their core franchises and has just come out and is a huge disaster. You'd think now would be the time to get, you know, all hands to the pumps, let's fix the problem, but apparently 121 people just need to go. And they say that's the cuts are part of an effort to restructure the studio, ensure that maximum effort goes into its core franchises. Sega is in a healthy financial position and remains committed to supporting and investing in Relic Entertainment and the franchises it is responsible for, including the critically acclaimed Company of Heroes series. Their parent company, Sega, says, "We're confident that following this necessary restructure, the studio will be in a position of strength to continue delivering outstanding experiences to players all over the world." And I think, you know, very interesting that they're, you know, fun spin. Sega's in a healthy financial position. It's like, yeah, okay, but where's Relic at? Where is your subsidiary? Because Sega fully owns Relic. I believe they have for about going on a decade now. Let's just take a look here. I did actually have this tab up. I don't know where it's gone. Relic Entertainment. Boop-a-da-ba-ba. Let's head on over to Wiki. Let's see what their history is. So yeah, they were actually acquired by THQ back in the day, and of course then they had issues. So at some point, Sega acquired them. Where would that have been? I believe it's been for about a decade. I might be wrong. I can't see where it says the jump over to Sega, but either way, they're fully acquired. So it's an interesting little bit of spin that they're saying, hey, well, we're still doing good. Oh, there we go. Yeah, 2013. I was right. 10 years. So let's go back to the news story. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? We're jumping ahead here. Making decisions like this is incredibly difficult, and as a studio that treasures its people and is proud of the culture it's grown, the focus is on supporting departing employees with, you know, yeah, of course. You're not just going to kick people necessarily out on the street. They have to say that. As this article points out, Relic only has 2 really core titles, aside from a brief detour to Age of Empires 4. They've been focusing on... it's been 12 years, actually, since the studio released a game that wasn't a Warhammer game or Company of Heroes game. And so it is strange that they say, hey, you know, it's difficult. These are difficult times ahead, difficult decisions to let go of a huge amount of staff. And it's like, well, surely the more difficult or the worst decision was not utilizing those 121 people, plus the 100 plus other people I believe are still at the studio, to actually make a really good game. because clearly there is a capacity within Relic Entertainment to do that. They've made numerous positive, good Company of Heroes titles. So why couldn't we do it this time round? Why are we focusing on monetization systems, for example? Maybe that distracts from making a great game. So, it is actually, it's tragic to see this shit. It's, you know, you've now, as we keep saying, it's almost every episode at this point. It's almost every single stream. How many studios are losing hundreds of people, whether firing them outright, going, hey, we need to cut 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever. But how many people are also just bleeding out the industry? I know I've said this a couple of times, but I know plenty of people just in my circles who are sort of either steadily exiting the industry or have just gone, fuck it, like I'm out, I'm gone. I can't put up with this shit anymore. And there's nowhere that looks like safe haven. There's no grass is greener on the other side place where people can go to find a stable career, to find a games company that actually wants to focus on making good games and routinely makes good decisions in aid of that goal. And so for every 100 or so people that I see getting let go from a studio, I always have to think, like, well, how many people does that dissuade from entering the industry? How many people does that dissuade from sticking around in the industry? Because if your head wasn't on the chopping block today, it's probably going to be on tomorrow. So it's better to be ahead, right? Better to get out on your own terms instead of getting shot in the back of the head, instead of getting lined up on the wall and just getting executed. And as I said, there's also a de-incentive for people to get into games, because if I go back to when I was studying and looking into getting into video gaming back in 2007 to 2010, and while yes, we had a financial crisis and it was a nightmare, there was still plenty of opportunities out there, and gaming as a whole, as an industry, the trajectory was still positive. Economically, everything was on the up, but also there's plenty of amazing studios that look like fine places to work at, where, not wearing rose-tinted glasses here, the industry has always had its problems. It's never been perfect, and, the regular issues like crunch and all that kind of stuff and low pay, that's always been a problem in the industry. But clearly it was to enough of a degree tolerable for most people. But that is clearly not the case now. And if I was looking at getting into the games industry fresh today, I would look at news stories like this and just be like, well, what's the point? Because I'm going to spend years working on Company of Heroes 3, or years working on Dreams at Media Molecule, or any one of these, Fire Sprite working on Horizon Call of the Mountain. Spend years on something which comes out and it's either, or it's like, yeah, this was okay, and then 100 of you get let go regardless. So what's the point? But they go on to say, we liked Company... Oh, this is the reviewers. They liked Company of Heroes 3 a lot, which, again, I've covered this. If we go to the Steam page, for example, I'm pretty sure it lists it there, that you had so many reviewers saying, hey, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, best game ever, the usual shit. Maybe if I go on the website. No, I think they've taken that image down. Well, probably a good idea that they took that down, to be honest with you. Let's see. Is it at the end of their trailers? No. I think they've taken all that out because it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing to have an image saying, hey, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10 from every single publication. And then you go on the Steam page and it's mixed all reviews and mostly negative recent reviews. Not good. Really not good. So they said they reviewed it favorably, but highlighted, look, there was a lot of issues, negative user reviews, people unhappy with the technical state of the game, microtransactions. This is all stuff we covered about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I believe. Their general manager says, in an insightful justification for the layoffs in an email, saying that the past year was incredibly difficult for the studio, a combination of significant delays, rapidly rising costs, high inflation, foreign exchange rate fluctuations have had a combined negative effect on the business, they wrote, and as a result, the measure of success for a studio of our size has grown and put more pressure on our titles to succeed in an increasingly competitive marketplace. And fair enough, again, we always have to say this. I think with every single one of these stories, like, yes, it's been a tough time, and COVID, economic issues, everyone's just like turbo gub gub fucked up in the head. Like, no one's doing good right now. So it's like, yes, okay, there have been problems. But when you actually look at the critical feedback to the game, people are saying, like, features which are fundamental to Company of Heroes 3, levels of quality that you found in Company of Heroes 1, 20 years ago at this point, are completely absent from this game. It's not, so you cannot just pin it entirely on, oh, well, inflation has happened and fluctuations in the market have occurred. Therefore, our game is complete dog shit. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And on top of that, you have them still deciding, or they were going to roll out this full like microtransaction marketplace, which I believe we covered in our previous coverage on this, that they've sort of rolled back a bit and said, hey, we're going to hold off a little bit on this to try fix the game. And it's like, oh, so why didn't you prioritize fixing the game over the marketplace? That would have been a sensible idea. Well, we know why. It's because that's not what Sega required them to do. We look at other news stories recently, like Sega acquiring Rovio, who are known for making Angry Birds. And what did Sega say? What was their justification for acquiring Rovio for a couple of billion? It's, these guys are really good at making free-to-play mobile experiences, and we want to use our resources to hypercharge Angry Birds, but we also want to use their skill, their platform, their resources to hypercharge all of our products. And what does that mean? It means applying the Rovio model to premium games, to the IPs that they have, Sonic and Crazy Taxi or Company of Heroes, whatever's in their catalog. They want to turn those games into something akin to a mobile experience, because that fundamentally is easier to make money off of. Less quality, not as good, absolute garbage. I mean, the mobile gaming sphere is, just dog shit top to bottom at this point. And that's actually what the rest of the industry, the kind of management of the industry wants, what I would call like normal gaming, PC console gaming. They want to turn that into a mobile-esque experience. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to present it as such. And they're still going to have fancy trailers and fancy high-paid voice actors and all the bells and whistles to kind of trick you and delude you into thinking you're getting, a next-gen experience, something that builds on the legacy of whatever IP that you're playing. But you're not. You're just getting basically a mobile game. And that's exactly what we see here. And again, it further brings up this question. I know I say it a lot, but you got to think, what is the point in being acquired by one of these holding companies, by a Sega or an Embracer or whoever, that yes, they might have development resources and publishing resources, etc. But when it comes down to it, let's just take this argument, this exact argument of significant project delays, rising costs, high inflation, etc., etc. All the reasons why a studio would be forced to release a game in a bad state. Been there, done that. Not exactly the same, but with Unbox Noobie's Adventure, back then it was actually just called Unbox, we ran out of money. We got screwed over a lot. We faced a lot of setbacks, a lot of issues, a lot of things that we couldn't deal with, some things that we could, and we were forced to make the difficult decision to roll out the game in a state that was lower than the standards than we personally held up to, on only one platform. We were aiming to put that game onto many platforms, and we had to go with just Steam. And we were fortunately, it did well enough that we were then able to get a new deal and get some money in, get it onto other platforms. It kind of worked out at the end of the day. We were in a very different situation. We were a self-funded developer that lost its publisher in a not so nice fallout, and we had to then pick up the pieces and move very, very quickly. So yeah, I understand there are plenty of situations where you got to bite the bullet, but you have a massive holding company. You have a massive publishing force, which, as they've said, Sega's going, hey, we're happy, we're going to continue to put money into this thing. And it's like, so what's the point in having that entity if it's not able to back you up in these difficult situations? If you have to behave the same as like a 7-man indie team struggling to, release a game with no money, if you essentially have to act the same way, and in fact, I would say, relatively speaking, we did better. Unbox didn't launch to mixed reviews. We launched to mostly positive reviews. We got a 9 out of 10 in Edge magazine. I guess they probably got a 9 out of 10 from Edge as well, but you get my point. Our game didn't release buggy, completely unfinished, with microtransactions built into it. We had no resources. These guys have all the resources in the world, relatively speaking, and that's what they decide to do. And I know that it's nobody with their head screwed on who actually is involved in making the game, making these decisions. It's the people at the top saying, look, we own this IP. We want to turn it into something that can make us more money. We don't want to put the amount of effort that was put in the past, because that's costly and expensive and potentially risky. You've got to actually try out new things, try new mechanics, new systems. We don't want to do that. So let's do the absolute bare minimum. We'll use this stuff as an excuse. No doubt fluctuations in the market will have had an effect, but we'll use it as an excuse. We'll shit it out. And then we can either pull a No Man's Sky on it, where over 5 years, if it makes enough money, and if we fire enough people, then that will sort of balance things out. Hey, we're in profit, we can reinvest some of those profits into making the game better, and maybe eventually Company of Heroes 3 will be mostly positive reviews, and then we can all go, hip hip hooray, we turned it around. Or it just doesn't go well, in which case, oh well, fuck it. What did Phil Spencer say? I know I keep saying this, but what did he say? Sometimes we make 6 out of 10s, guys. Sometimes we just drop the ball and we don't pick it back up. And that's going to kill a company like ours. We can't afford to drop the ball. They can afford to drop almost not every single ball in their pocket, but they can afford to drop many repeatedly, and they will be okay because they have other forms of revenue coming in. And so it just allows them to act in a pretty disgraceful manner to not only release this game in such a poor state after years of development, but to then fire tons of people who clearly could help fix the problem. It's just gross. It's disgusting. So let's see, we'll wrap this up. So all of these factors have led to the decision with Sega to reduce our studio size substantially and refocus our efforts. We will continue to support our core titles, including Company of Heroes 3, and our upcoming projects. Amazing that they're mentioning, amazing that they're already mentioning upcoming projects. No doubt they have other stuff in the works. I wouldn't be talking about that at this stage. I would be, I don't know, I'd be saying, look, we're going to fix Company of Heroes 3 to give our consumers the confidence in us as a team, as us as a studio. Because why would you buy our upcoming games if we can't get the third in a long-running franchise to work? Does that not make sense? Sega has declined to comment on the layoffs. Maybe they will with a bit of pressure, but I honestly, I don't think many people even know that this is happening. I mean, this news story only dropped about a day ago, I think. Plenty of people are talking about, it's very sad, and who remembers the Relic entertainment of the past? And it's like, I know we've said this many times, but a lot of these studios, they change once the upper management leaves, or once they get bought out by one of these holding companies and become a subsidiary. It just changes the nature of how that business operates. It changes the DNA of that business. And so you might hear a word like Relic, you might hear Company of Heroes, and associate that with positive memories, with good times, and a seal of quality. Like, that stuff's actually going to be good, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case, because the good is gone and it's been replaced with something else. So it's sad to see a follow-up to this story. Hopefully they're able to turn the game around, but I don't have any confidence in that happening. And I don't think it was a mistake. It wasn't an accident, them mentioning upcoming projects. I think the writing is on the wall here. It's time to move on, which is sad. And no doubt there will be more Company of Hero games in the future. I think, as you saw as I mentioned with the Rovio acquirement, I think you're going to see Company of Heroes come back in a very different sort of way. I think that's probably the long-term strategy. But we'll see. We'll take a look in another couple of weeks, in another couple of months. Actually, just before we move on, let's just take a look, just real quick, at the subreddit, the subreddit for Company of Heroes, just talking about this. As they say, the mind boggles. Don't understand how they have a license to print money and throw it away. Worrying. Next week we'll share more information. Yeah, there you go. I'm not the only one who's noticing. It's Dawn of War 3 all over again, which was a previous major disaster. And yeah, I think, we'll wrap it up here. I mean, I think this is exactly right. Don't blame the workers, blame management, and blame the layers of management that go up through the holding company, Sega in this case, that have made these bad decisions. It's absolutely tragic. But we'll move on. We'll move on to more positive news. How about this? There we go. We've got a super studio forming once again. It seems like every stream we cover more super studios. So this is DICE's former Mr. Battlefield has a new studio working on a next generation online shooter. This is Lars Gustavsson. Don't know how to say his name. Has partnered with 3 other former DICE devs to launch Time to Kill games. And he was the former creator, Lars, on DICE's Battlefield games, which I guess used to be awesome. Probably why he's left. And their new studio in Stockholm, I mean, Jesus Christ, I think, 50% of Stockholm must be games development studios at this point? It's insane. Well, they're working on a new next-generation online shooter, unsurprisingly. And that's joined by Daniel Berlin, former World, lead designer, Vidar Nygren, Peter Hoyle, so a bunch of, people who are important to the DNA of Battlefield. So I don't think it's I don't think we have to make many guesses as to what it is that they're making. What I immediately noticed on this article actually is that it says that TTK has secured significant funding for its project, which sure sounds nice, and says it's maintained its creative freedom too. Okay, significant funding for a studio which I believe in this article mentions, so in another article they mentioned the studio currently consists of 7 people, but they have plans to scale up to between 80 and 120 employees working on a new shooter built in Unreal Engine. Dice guys, clearly we're going to be getting some kind of Battlefield game, but I don't see how you can have somebody who is funding that enterprise, somebody who is willing to fund 120 members of staff month on month, assumedly for years before this game is actually going to launch, and then obviously beyond that, this is going to be an expansive type of game, right? They're going to want to grow it and turn it into a huge thing, and then eventually that will be acquired by a Sega or Embracer or whoever. So this is a significant investment. I just don't see how that computes, unless Lars is one of the guys putting money into this, unless some of the people actually running the show, boots on the ground, are investors, not just founders, but actually investors in the business. I don't see how they're going to have creative control over this. I don't see how this is anything other than what we keep seeing with all these other studios, like Firewalk, for example, who we've brought up a few times, where it's, hey, we're ex Bungie, we're ex Destiny. Here, we've got this super team of people that we're bringing together, and we're going to make an iteration of the thing that we previously worked on. It's like, we're sick of working on Battlefield. We're off to make, Battlefield. We're sick of working on Destiny. We're off to work on Destiny. But it will have a different name. And again, why would somebody invest into that? Like, it's not to push boundaries. It's not to shake things up. It's to go, hey, well, Destiny, I made money. Battlefield made money. Could you do that again, but for us? Because if we pay for it outright, we own it outright. If it becomes a huge success, then we can sell it to somebody and make even more money. That sounds great, right? Not necessarily for gamers, not necessarily for us, because what you have is, instead of a constant feedback loop of developers and publishers competing against one another, trying to one-up one another, sometimes through iteration, sometimes through copying each other's formulas, but with a regular dosage of people coming in and saying, I'm just going to make something absolutely insane that completely destroys the current gaming landscape, revolutionizes everything, and forces everyone to make quantum leap forwards. Whether that's in terms of design, or graphics, or processing power, whatever it is, this was a regular element of gaming. Which is why we had, especially through the late 90s and the noughties, all you would have to do is look at each E3, look at the big announcements in that time period, and like every year, it's like the most crazy shit, the most crazy release schedules all throughout the year, amazing games, new IPs, sequels, whatever. It was a great time to be a gamer, because there was always something new, and there was always people pushing boundaries. What you have here is an investor class coming in and saying, we like the look of this thing that already exists. Can we take the people, or some of the people who made it, and can we do a Control-C, Control-V? Yes, we're going to have to tweak it a bit, but we don't want them doing something too crazy. We want to find a formula that makes money. That is what we are going... That is not what we are going to face. That's what we're living in right now, right? This is why we're seeing less original games year on year on year. This is why we're seeing reboots and rehashes, because you've got people looking at the spreadsheet and going, well, hey, Metroid Prime was great 20 years ago. Can we just up-res the graphics, re-release it, and it will make money? Can we take Saints Row and just, not just the IP, but the engine, animations, and can we throw the B team on it and just spit out another Saints Row? Well, here we go again. It's, hey, we've got the Battlefield, guys. Can we make another Battlefield? And I would argue, like, do we need another Battlefield? And if we do we need it from the same creative team, the same creative leadership, but with an entity sat on top that has no incentive for true creativity, that is trying its hardest every step of the way to find the formula to make something that is generic and status quo sating so that it can make as much money as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. That can't be good for the gaming world. It just can't. So we'll take a look at some of the comments from this article on gamesindustry.biz. This is a bit more interview orientated. So if we scroll down, all 4 founders insist there is more to TT Games than just a bunch of old dices. On the other side of this door, there are people that aren't old dices. There's some new people. It's about mixing. I don't necessarily like to call myself old. I don't feel super old, but the old with the new. fair enough. That's good to hear. That's cool. But is that enough? Okay, you've got some like QA testers who are like 18. Good. Awesome. Might need a bit more than that. My belief is that we're still just scratching the surface of what the games industry can do. We need young and untainted minds to dare to come in with radically different ideas. Maybe our experience can help with the facilitation of this hive mind that sets up diversity of different perspectives that can bring nuances and at the first glance crazy ideas to the table. Again, not to be like too cynical, right? One sec. Not to be too cynical. And we'll take a look at their website in a second, but with the information that they have significant investment, and with all investors in the world right now being so focused on like the Larry Page, like ESG, you gotta have diversity, you've gotta have quotas, etc., etc. It's interesting that immediately this is what Lars is talking about. He doesn't say it in so many words as like, hey, we're gonna stuff the room with women and black guys and that's gonna make it super diverse, but he's saying, hey, we need young people to come in with radically different ideas that sets up diversity of different perspectives. This is what we heard from the Dove Soap Lady and Sarkeesian and everybody else. It's this thought process or this line repeatedly. So yeah, I agree. We need young, untainted minds in order to create new stuff. But is that actually what he's talking about? And again, will the people in charge actually allow that? I'm sussy. I'm sorry. I'm feeling a bit suspect over that. What can I say? It helps that Stockholm is full of such people. Okay, cool. We often get asked, how come there are so many developers in Sweden? I think we more or less stayed out of world wars. You didn't all get killed. So you had time and money to grow. Yeah, and you didn't kill all your smart people. Honestly, that's probably a sound point. We lost probably all of our good people over those 2 wars. They didn't. Simple as. Hey, Matt, that might be why they've got such like an investment class over there as well, because so many of these holding companies and investment types are from the Nordic region. That could answer it. That's interesting. We'll scroll down. Let's see what else we got here. Swedish culture is part of the reason why the team is so eager to bring in new people. Well, we all know about Swedish culture and bringing in new people. Oh my god. Let's see. Take Lars, for example. A juggernaut within games development if you ever met one. No doubt. You're not going to find him in a corner office with a nice view. No, that'll be for the people who are paying for this. That'll be for the people running the show. Yeah, they go on to talk about flat development structure. Dooba dooba dooba. This is pretty dry stuff, guys. I apologize. Let's just take a look at the website. That's going to be better to react to. This is dry as shit. Anything? I mean, I'm just scan reading this. I mean, yeah, working in Unreal, better than working in Frostbite, I guess. It's a lot of, hey, we're setting out to do the best thing ever and, you know, accomplish our dreams. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at the website, because that's probably just going to be more fun. So, TTK, Time to Kill. Brand new studio formed by industry veterans. We're building the next generation of online shooters. Why we exist. To combine the expertise of industry veterans with the latest ideas from the new generation of developers. It's always this kind of stuff. I mean, every single time we go on one of these like supergroup websites, it's always this kind of like high concept, like we're here to inspire and dramagineer a future for the generations to come. It's like it not really saying anything. Very investable, very safe. I'd love to see one of these guys come out with just like the most unsafe website, the most unsafe proposal ever. But it's always this like very kind of egalitarian, open, free, nice, wishy-washy corporate messaging, which is just disappointing. It doesn't get me excited. This is not what, when I was growing up, this is not how studios used to talk in the 90s and the early noughties. Who are we? Our aim is to be the most respected frontrunners of connected entertainment. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's not cool, man. That's not an interesting... I mean, one, that doesn't sound like anything to do with, like, making great games. You'd think their aim would be, like, to be the fucking best game makers in the world. Or, like, we're gonna smash the shit. We're gonna take DICE, our former employees, and we're gonna fucking destroy them. We're gonna break their legs, break their arms. We're not gonna kill them, but we're gonna leave them in a state of crippled agony due to how awesome our game is. You know, I'd love to see something like that. But our aim is to be the respected frontrunners of connected entertainment. Do you get excited by connected entertainment? I know I don't. I know what that means. That means IP exploitation. That means that our game is on mobile, and it's on your TV and your PC, and we've got NFTs and BPDs and all sorts of things going on. I don't like the sound of that. What I love the sound of is like an amazing game, right? Which we really need right now. And we're building, let's continue. We're building a studio culture where great ideas can come from anywhere. Well, of course. I've always wanted to ask you, where do you get your ideas from? It's like that level of just nonsense. Their values. Here we go. We get to the values section. Lead by example. Push boundaries. Deliver on promises. Okay, like it's not really getting me hyped. It's not particularly exciting, interesting, or new. I think I've read that on about 24 game dev websites at this point. It's just not interesting anymore. I was watching like old E3 videos and like pictures from the E3 show floor and like old advertising and stuff, and like it really cannot be understated like how different the world was even 10 years ago, but especially 15, 20 years ago. You wouldn't see anybody talking like this, unless I'm crazy, but I'm going back and looking at the footage. Like, this is not how developers presented themselves. They didn't present themselves as professional, investable outfits. They were creatives, they were bold, they were brash, they were really fucking weird, but like in a fun, entertaining way. They didn't talk about their values. They didn't talk about, we deliver on promises and lead by example. It's like, yeah, that sounds like something your corporate overlord loves. That's literally like I'm top of my class. I get I get A stars on every exam, and I always leave an apple for my teacher. It's like, wow, great fucking job. You're an absolute kiss ass. You suck up to the people with power. Awesome. That to me is not an entity that's gonna also produce amazing, like really actually boundary pushing, like edgy, incredible, exciting experiences. I just don't see that happening. Well, we continue. Let's go on. There's the team. There's the chaps. No doubt, and legends. These guys are legends. Worked on Battlefield 1942, this guy, all the way through. Oversaw the Battlefield franchise. Was a massive Battlefield fan. Haven't been for part of a decade now, but was. So no doubt, these guys, great. What I'm concerned about is they're talking like corporate stooges, and they're saying they're heavily invested in by some massive corporate entity. Most likely, right? That's my concern. What's their pedigree? Well, we know that. They've worked on Battlefield and Far Cry. Okay, cool. Want to join us? Maybe. Should I infiltrate? I'll join them and find out what's going on. We live to inspire, connect, and entertain. Okay. Oh! Side design by 1-1. Good fellas, good chaps. They worked on us with our previous company right as we died. We were doing stuff with them. I do like the website's alright. The website's fine. That's good. I like 1-1. They do good sites, but it's the content. Like this stuff. Time to game, time to rule. It's time to what PTFO? What the fuck does that mean? I don't know what that means. I'm getting too old. Time to shine. Time to have fun. Wahoo! Time to peel. What? Okay, some of these I don't get, but point being, on the one hand, we've got legacy studios being torn apart after releasing substandard shit, and on the other hand, anyone who's not getting squeezed out the industry is going on to form these supergroups, where people who are arguably far worse than the legacy publishers currently kind of ripping up, the classics like EA and whatnot, buying studios and destroying them. I would say this new like investor holding class group coming in is like 10 times worse, because they're not coming from an original point of at least kind of wanting to make great games. They are just purely in this for the platform, for the money making. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But we'll move on to our next story. A positive one, might I add. Look at this. PSVR2 sales at 600,000. 6 weeks after launch, Sony confirms purchases trend higher than PSVR. Ooh! Sony has today announced in its business segment meeting that PSVR2 sales were just shy of 600,000 6 weeks after the original, after the launch in 22nd of February 2023. This means purchases of the latest VR headset are up 8% on the launch of the original PSVR device in the same period. That data covers sales through until the beginning of April, so the headset should have surpassed the aforementioned stat as we approach June. And, we've got some very, very boring stats here. But hey, it's going up, and then the more to come. As I've said many, many times, I mean, I'm dubious about this, about the numbers. Not necessarily saying they're lying, but I'm feeling a bit sus just because when you look at PSVR2 chatter, when you actually look at people on Twitter or on the subreddit actually talking, there's still not a whole lot of talk there. I'm not seeing where these hundreds of thousands of people are, but no doubt some of them are out there. And again, it doesn't really matter because looking into the future, I don't see this stuff as being massively exciting. I don't see Beat Saber and Green Hell VR as the things which are going to propel this into the next level. And again, you've heard me say this several times. Hey, it's great to hear it's doing better than we thought and we have a vested interest at Enemy Team with that happening because we are making a VR game. We'd love to get that onto PSVR2. And regardless, like the better PSVR2 does, the better the entire VR ecosystem does, because that will force others to start investing more time and money into developing hardware, into developing content. Maybe some of that money comes our way, who knows? And the most important part, obviously, but the consumer base grows. If there's more people out there looking for VR content, there's more people to sell to. That's great for us when we're selling a VR game. But again, I still don't see these, okay, the numbers are better than what we originally thought. Does that mean that these are great numbers? Like, if you lowball something and say, I think this is going to do really bad, and then someone comes back and says, it's not doing really bad, it's just doing bad. Is that good? Or is that still bad? It's good, relatively speaking, but it needs to be better, right? That's kind of how I feel. And again, maybe I'm being overly unfair on the PSVR 2 and what it's required to do. But I do view this thing as a major VR console. Equivalent to Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, or Nintendo. Xbox, Sony, Nintendo, they release consoles. If any one of those released a console and it did a couple of 100,000 units in the first few months, everyone would view that as a massive disaster, right? And especially extending to even games as well, same deal. Any major IP that comes out, Zelda comes out and it blows the doors off. Tekken's coming out, going to blow the doors off. Diablo 4 probably will do the same. Because that's what you would expect. If any one of these games came out and they did a couple of 100,000 units, for that kind of product, you would go, well, that's bad. That's not good. And if people then turn around and go, well, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and they have time to sell more games, it's like, yeah, of course, true. But trajectory-wise, we can all project out into the future and go, this is not good. And you can also ask the question of, like, well, why is it doing so bad in the first place? Why is there not that momentum? Why is there not that interest? So, as they say, as we covered on Monday, Jim Ryan said it's too early to accurately judge the popularity of the headset. It's just launched, so it may be a little too early, but they're happy to see positive reactions from people online. New PSVR 2 titles are expected to be revealed in the PlayStation Showcase, and as I said on Monday, I think super important. It's not a mistake that this information has come out now, and the coverage that we will do on the Showcase later tonight, it's going to be super... I think this is such an important moment for VR. It's kind of like make or break, because what we do need is PSVR 2 doing 2 million units. And I don't like people saying, hey, it's on track to do like PSVR 1. And hey, it'll be good if it does those numbers. It's like, no, it has to do like 5-10 times those numbers. You can't have a console come out and exist for years and do X number of units, and then the sequel to that console does about the same. That just doesn't track for growth, right? Which is what we need, because those numbers, while okay, are not good enough, clearly, to sustain an entire medium, the medium of VR. It needs to be much, much greater, and there has to be growth. There has to be an expanding user base. Because a user base that maintains its numbers, for years, is going to do what? It's not going to maintain forever. It's going to start to gradually decline as people move on from that hardware, as they go to newer experiences elsewhere. If you can't constantly bring new people into the fold, you're going to be selling to less people year on year. Well, who wants to make content? Who wants to make games for an ever-shrinking market? Nobody. This is why, even though there's plenty of people, I'm sure, still playing on their PlayStation 3s or GameCubes or whatever, nobody makes games for those platforms anymore because that's a shrinking market. They exist, but they're not worth making products for. That's the concern that I have in terms of the direction VR is going, is that we could be very close to a point where if the numbers merely maintain for any longer, that's when everybody starts to check out. That's when consumers lose faith and start leaving. And when that happens, that is negative momentum. That's downwards. That's a downwards trajectory. And reversing that would take like the absolute mother of all Hail Marys. It would take so much energy to send that in the other direction that it's essentially, you could say it's dead at that point. So I think this is really positive. This is a very positive development. And we really hope the PlayStation Showcase, they pull out all the stops. Hopefully PSVR2 is up there, not just as a sideline thing, which again is how I feel the PSVR2 has been handled by Sony thus far, is it's a thing, it attaches to the console. And we did an advert with Ozzy Osbourne that one time, which was bizarre. But, you know, that's it. Like, that's kind of how the console has felt. It's just, it's there, it's on the side. It's like, it's literally like a side tray. Like, hey, do you want sides with that? And you're like, I could give or take. Maybe. Maybe not. No, we need this to be like, this is important. This is something we're seriously invested in. So, we'll see. We await with bated breath, and we will be covering it later. I mean, that feeds into, actually very handily, our final bit of coverage for the night. Doop-a-doo. PlayStation Showcase predictions. What to expect from the hour-long PS5 and PSVR2 event. So I'm using this article, Games Radar. I'll throw in my 2 cents as well. But let's see what Joe Donnelly has to say. What does he predict? So he's expecting Marvel Spider-Man 2. You know, okay, no doubt they are making another Spider-Man. We'll probably see it. I thought the original was... It was fine. It was okay. But like so many open world games, like it is an open world. It was very linear. I thought the space was amazing, but super underutilized. I hope they go in that direction. I hope they go more in that kind of Breath of the Wild, sort of open expanse, do what you want. Don't just do tech trees for the sake of tech trees. Actually, let me play the Spider-Man game in a different way to everybody else, because the tech tree in that game was just, eventually you want to unlock anything. There's no downside to unlocking anything. So it's not, it's a boring progression system. It would be very cool if they go that way, but most Sony games, I mean, you know, what's the next on this list? Last of Us, go for the kind of linear, narrative-orientated, 12 hours of cutscenes, yada-yada kind of experience. Absolutely not my cup of tea. I find it boring. I find it's like mid-wit central. It's like if you can't really play video games, but you want to say you're a gamer, you play games full of cutscenes, which just basically hand everything to you on a silver platter. They just say, well, do this, and now do that, and go left, and stroke the giraffe. And you're not allowed to not stroke the giraffe. You must stroke the fucking giraffe. And then carry on, and then the game will be over. And you get to pretend like you're a badass. So, no doubt we'll see The Last of Us multiplayer. Maybe, and honestly, yeah, maybe some more Last of Us content. I mean, obviously, the show is doing very well. The games have done very well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, like, DLC for Last of Us 2 or an expansion or a spin-off. There's been a lot of talk of this, that Metal Gear Solid 3 is getting some kind of a remake. And I think it's just fucking hilarious that they got rid of Kojima, right? And it wasn't a positive, amicable breakup as far as any of us can tell from the outside, so that they can focus on like pachinko games. They can focus on not making video games. And then years later, they go, well, what IPs do we have in the backlog? Well, we got MGS3. People actually really like that. Let's remake that and put that out because that's what everybody else is doing. And it's like, well, if you'd retained the original talent, you'd have like Metal Gear Solid 7 at the moment, or you would have had Death Stranding for yourself. Short-term money making. That is the name of the game. Another Uncharted. Again, what did I just say? You know, I don't think I'm going to enjoy the Sony. I don't think I'm going to enjoy the PlayStation Showcase because it's all these linear cutscene, quick time event. You're being tricked into thinking you're playing a game when really it's just a massive theme park ride. I'm not a big fan of these kind of experiences, but no doubt I expect to see something like that. And then here we go, PSVR 2. Any mention? Any rumors? Not seeing anything. I hope that we have new stuff. What I do not want to see... Okay, let's cover that for a second. What I do not want to see in the PlayStation showcase, in the PSVR2 segment, is more Beat Sabers, is more Super Hots, more stuff that we've played elsewhere. We need new stuff. It's got to be shit that takes advantage of the PS5, and it's got to be stuff that is different and exciting and breaches, or what would you say? Yeah, like destroys the conventions of VR as we know it. Like we're trying to do with Gunday. You know, we are doing a first-person VR game where you shoot enemies and whatnot. Okay, and you could say, hey, I've done that in Half-Life Alyx. Hey, I've done that in Superhot and Fracked and all these other games. It's not that exciting. What are you doing differently? And it's like, we're doing backflips, we're doing cartwheels, we're doing dives, we're doing shit, we're spinning you around at high speed, jump kicks and stuff. We're doing things which completely go against the normal conventions of VR, because a lot of people design VR games to be slow and comfortable. They don't want people feeling any kind of motion sickness. They don't want to push anybody too hard. And my response to that is like, well, politely, fuck them. Like, if you can't handle it, then go play something else. When Mirror's Edge dropped, loads of people could not play Mirror's Edge because they got motion sickness. Now, it's a video game on a screen from a company that's done loads of games where you run around with guns and shoot things. Why did they struggle with Mirror's Edge? Because it involved a lot more motion. I could handle that. Other people couldn't. Does that mean that the designers were wrong? Was DICE wrong for making Mirror's Edge in the way that they did? Should they have had all of those mechanics in, but layered it with comfort settings and slowed the action down and made it so that everybody could play it? And would that have made it a better game as a consequence? I think categorically, no. While Mirror's Edge had its issues, it was so special because it defied and broke boundaries. It did things which nobody thought were possible, and everybody thought went against convention. They did it anyway. And while flawed, it was an amazing entry into the gaming landscape, and it changed things. It changed how everybody viewed how a first-person video game could be done. That is what we're trying to do with Gunday, and I hope to God we see that, because it can't all be on us. Like, we cannot be Atlas here. We can't be the only ones trying to defy VR norms. And again, that was the point I was going to make, is that those VR norms are what's killing VR. That's why gamers aren't jumping on board, because they look at these experiences and go, well, they're slow, they're dull, they're samey. Teleporting around to move sucks. Not having exciting gameplay, like literally standing in a room and moving blocks around, like, sucks. Some of these experiences can be fun, but the overwhelming majority of them are samey and boring because they don't want you to feel anything. People go, well, if you're feeling motion, that's bad. Like, we don't want you to feel motion sickness or any kind of like extreme feelings. And it's like, to me, that's what video games are great at doing, is making you feel something. And if it happens to make you feel uncomfortable, it really is a case of like, well, get used to it or move on, because I can get used to that. I can play Gunday and do a cartwheel flip, and I'm fine with it. So, or I can put up with any feelings that I might get. I was fine with Mirror's Edge, but if I fell off a building, I'd always feel that like rushing sense of like, it felt like I was falling. Uncomfortable feeling. That's fine. That's why I'm playing the game. So hopefully that's my fingers crossed. Can anybody do anything interesting in VR and do it for the PlayStation VR2? We shall see. Now, Fire Sprite has apparently got a mystery horror game in the works. That'll be one that'll be interesting. If I can get Jack on the stream tonight, that'll be interesting. See, he used to work at Fire Sprite. Not that I expect him to drop any NDA spoilers, but interesting to see what he thinks of his old business. At least one lovely new indie game. Yeah, I mean, PlayStation used to be like the home of indie titles. Holy shit, Little Devil, I didn't even realize. Yeah, Little Devil Inside. Let's just bring that up for a second. We got any footage of this game? No, of course not. What a shit article. That's a game that's literally, I backed that on Kickstarter. Holy shit, like 7 years ago? It's been a long time that I've been waiting. I hope to get my backer awards. Hey, developers of that game, whoever you are. I think they're in Singapore or Hong Kong. Wherever you guys are, I hope you haven't forgotten about me. I better get my free copy when that drops. But yeah, I hope we get some indie titles. Sony, PlayStation used to be the home of indie experiences back in the day. Not so much anymore. They put out, they did a press release, what, 2-3 years ago at this point, probably more, saying like, hey, we're moving on from the whole indie thing. It served its purpose. Now we're going on to live services and things that actually make money, which is sad because, the running kind of theme I've seen through many gaming online like places of conversation is people saying like, well, the best place for new experiences is the indie sphere. That yes, if you want the AAA graphics, if you want the FOMO events, you've got to go play a Fortnite or one of these other live service battle royale nightmare experiences. But if you want actually something new and exciting and different, you have to go indie. You have to go to a smaller studio because they have the incentive to push boundaries and do things differently, and they don't have the capacity to make those super bombastic, roller coaster-esque experiences. And hey, surprise, surprise, that's actually what gamers want. So I'd hope we see more of that at the PlayStation Showcase, but we probably won't. We probably won't. But fingers crossed. Bloodborne 2 or any other game from... Okay, I guess he's just ending it as like, hey, hopefully you see something you love. It's like, okay, fine. A running theme here just through this guy's article, and I won't bring up everybody else's, but it's a running theme through other articles and like conversations I've seen. It's a lot... just to run back through. Sequel to Spider-Man, more Last of Us, here's a game from like 23 years ago, another Uncharted, maybe a remake, hey, probably a bunch of PSVR2 ports, hopefully something new, games which have been in development for almost a decade that we haven't seen anything of, and like, hey, maybe you get more Bloodborne, and stuff like that. It's a lot of unoriginal experiences, which to loop back to that first story about Relic and Sega and holding companies, again, I know I've said this a lot, but everybody is trying to find the formula, the repeatable formula. The people in charge now want to turn video games into like toothbrushes and washing machines. It's how can we make this a dependable, repeatedly sellable thing, which doesn't push boundaries, it doesn't wow people, but it is practical. And anything it's like whenever like a new toothpaste drops and they go, hey, this has supreme X microcrystalline structures, which will make your teeth 28% wider than previous iterations of our toothpaste. It's all bullshit. It's nonsense. It's a sparkly thing to make you think that you're getting something new when, hey, you're just getting like white paste out of a tube that you shove in your mouth 2 times a day. As you always do, and as they want you to do for the rest of your natural born life. Well, it's the same with this. They want you buying Bloodborne 2 and 3 and 12. They want you rebuying Super Hot again and again on every single platform. And if they could have their way, they would literally just re-release the same stuff. And honestly, that's where we're at. So we covered 2-3 weeks ago. It's like the biggest games of this year is like a Dead Space remake and a Resi remake and a Metroid Prime remaster. And that's ultimately what they want us to get to. And so that's my predictions. I can't see myself getting particularly excited while watching this showcase. I mean, I'm a jaded motherfucker at this point. But it will be interesting to see if they roll out anything new and good. But regardless, we'll be there to cover it and react to it, no doubt. So that'll be kicking off at 9 p.m. BST tonight. So I think we might jump on a little bit before that to do a pre-show chatty poo-poo. Do some reactions with Michael and Jack, or pre-reactions, and then we'll watch it and we'll see what plays out. Hopefully we don't get banned off of Twitch and YouTube. Hopefully, we'll see. But I think that just about wraps it up. So that's my thoughts. We'll see how the show goes later tonight. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. I wanted to complain a bit more about Tears of the Kingdom because I think it's mid. I don't even think it's mid. I think it's bad. I straight up don't think it's a good game. Highly controversial opinions. You heard me complain a bit about it last week. I haven't played it in over a week now. I've been so frustrated by it, but I think I'll save that. If Friday's a slow news day, probably talk about it on Friday. We'll talk a bit about the showcase on Friday as well. But this has been the Enemy Stream. Thank you very much for watching. We are live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. BST, 10 a.m. EST. You can catch the entire show, re-uploads, VODs of the show on our YouTube channel, along with footage of the games that we're making, clips, reactions, all sorts. So make sure you like, favorite, subscribe, add us to your bookmarks, whatever you want to do. And yeah, make sure that you check us out tonight at, I think we'll aim for about 8:40, 8:45. Sometime around then, BST. I don't know what that is, American time. You work it out. You're fucking 5, 6, 7, 8 hours behind us or ahead of us, whatever. This has been the Enemy Stream, and we will see you later tonight.